Hey, I'm Naya. Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm very excited for today's video because we're going to be doing part 3 of things to be mindful of. Now, I'm super passionate about this type of content. I love sharing knowledge with you, any interactions I can think of. And for today's video, for today's episode of this series, I guess, Dueling came through. He was featured on the Tri Brigade deck profile. If you can remember, I keep mentioning his plays and Twin Twister stuff. If you know, you know, from previous videos. So he came through, he told me a lot, just a lot of interactions, a lot of things he could remember. He compiled like a list, discussed it with me. I saw some interactions that I felt like needed to be mentioned. My husband told me a couple. So it's just a group effort of everything we felt like should be shared with the people. So please, I encourage you guys, if you can, if you feel like you find something interesting, share it with me. Like, I'm pretty sure I have my email and everything like on the channel, like in the about section, I think it is. Just let me know or just comment, do whatever, but I want to share even more things you guys can remember with other people, make even more episodes. So, I mean, I'm gonna continue to produce them anyway, but like, if you have some interesting things to share with me, please do so. And let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first interaction we're gonna go over is how you can play around Droll to make your opponent not be able to respond to something because of droplet on resolution. So this may sound weird, but you're gonna understand immediately. So if you, for example, go, all right, so here's a monster that we can actually droplet. So if you, for example, this is very applicable in Drytron, obviously, because Droll hurts a lot. If you go Cyber Emergency, search out Alpha, for example. On resolution is the option when your opponent could Droll. But because you're the first one that's able to activate fast effects, because that's just how the game works, you're the first one because you're the turn player, you can go droplet on resolution and pitching alpha, and because you pitch alpha, your opponent cannot respond with monster effects. So you negate something, whatever, and they cannot respond with Droll because Droll would have to activate on the same chain, but it cannot because it will have to be chain link 2, and it cannot be because you pitched a monster. So this is how you can play around Droll. Obviously, they can draw you like later in the turn or something, but if you just truly want something to go through and it's not just Drytron applicable, this is how you can do it. Okay, so for the next one, we have how you can run something quite interesting in Drytron. So as you're gonna be able to tell, this episode is very like separate decks oriented. So we're gonna go through Drytron, we're gonna go through a bunch of other decks and just random, very deck specific things. It's still gonna be interesting though, and it teaches you a lot, but this is how it's gonna work. So for Drytron again, what you can run is, I'll just wait that the Cyber Emergency searches it. It's gonna be a hurt. So what you do is you can search it, set it, and make Mega Fleet. And it's just like this. So you get rid of something in the extra monster zone. Most of the time, this is going to be either Appaloosa or heavenly like spheres of, spheres. It's going to be Appaloosa or spheres. And you can just use it because Cyber Emergency searches it. And in the Drytron extra deck, I'm pretty sure you have some free space to be able to run Mega Fleet. So here's that. So this next one is going to be how you can make Zeus on your first turn in Virtual World. So now we're gonna throw some Virtual World interesting things at you, basically. So how to make a Zeus on your first turn in Virtual World. So what you do is you banish Chucha to boost, so this is engrave, you banish it, to boost up the level of Shanshan. And then you continue. And you make Zeus, because Ultimaya has its original level as 12. So probably by the board, you could see, some of you could tell, but this is what happens. You just boost up Shanshan and you make a Zeus just like that, chill on it, since Ultimaya essentially is not doing much in the extra monster zone. You obviously probably have a Synchro Dragon here, and Shanshan is not always applicable like in every single matchup. So if you can afford to do so, just make a Zeus, negate something with Crystal Wing if you can afford to get rid of your board. If you don't have Chucha set up, that's an option. All right, so this next one is going to be how you can force out Chucha. So if your opponent has this basic board of Shanshan, Crystal Wing, Chucha, and they used Crystal Wing already, and you have a Talons, which I'm pretty sure I should click show both. Anyway, you have a talent, and how with TTT you can force out Chucha as well. So your opponent, for example, activated Crystal Wing, negating something, your monster effect. You go talents, and you decide to you take Shenshin, and you go to the battle phase. And on the attack declaration, Shenshin's effect is that you can return a banished monster to the owner's graveyard. So you activate it, and since your opponent probably has something banished, at least a Neon from the previous turn's combo, or a monster from before, if this is like mid-game, whatever, they probably have a monster banished. So you attempt to use the effect, and now at this point they need to decide, do they want to use Chucha to pop it and get rid of it? Do they let it go through and then, it gets shuffled back and then, returned to the graveyard, and they still have the Shenshin? Do you leave them the Shenshin? What do you want to do? But in any way, shape or form, you deal with Chucha. Like somehow, maybe they use it. Yeah, here I decided to use it for some reason. Pop it, whatever, get rid of it, so it's in their graveyard and they can revive it again. I guess this was the reason and the only sensible one. But yeah, that's how you can deal with Chucha, as well as taking like Shenshin and actually getting rid of it, because if they pop it with Chucha, then effectively you dealt with everything, and if you have an extender, you can just play freely. Alright, so right now we're just gonna go over a couple of random things about Virtual World, and the first one being, if you activate Janvu, summon something from the graveyard. You want to summon something, but something gets chained, for example, and for some reason or the other, you get rid of your hand. Now, the scenario I could think of is, for example, something in your grave would want to get called by your opponent. You chain your Ghost Bell from hand or something like that, so you don't have any cards left. But what happens is Janvu is going to resolve as much as possible, attempt to resolve as much as possible. It's still going to summon the monster, but you won't need to discard. Now, the next one being Gossip Shadow. Now, I realize Gossip Shadow is not run, often anymore, but it's still something interesting. If you want, you can use its actual second effect that used to be used in the Rongo combo pile deck way back when, because it can move under a number monster, together with its materials, and you can put it under Utopia Beyond, and then put this under Zeus and make just a huge beefy Zeus that's gonna deal with the opponent. And then another Gossip Shadow fun thing is, if you are under Joel, if your opponent is under Joel, for example, your opponent is under Prosperity, you cannot legally activate Gossip Shadow, because the activation needs to be legal, because you should draw a card. So if your opponent or you are not able to draw, you cannot legally activate Gossip Shadow. And the last one for Virtual World is Ultimaya needs its materials to be sent to the graveyard. So you need to send to the graveyard to be able to summon Ultimaya Tzolk'in. And if you, for example, misplay, make Shenshin beforehand, you're just effectively locking yourselves out, because you will not be able to summon Ultimaya, because they need to be sent to the graveyard to summon him. Alright, so this next interaction we're gonna go over. By this board state, you already probably know what's going on. And what we're actually gonna be going over, said this twice, what we're actually gonna be talking about is the Salamangreat Field Spell, because it does have a second effect. Like, the effect is there, and it's not just to gain some life points in time, it's to actually preserve your floodgate. For example, in the Tri-Brigade matchup right here, I made a scenario as we have a kit, we're locked into fires, 3 engrave. So the game plan at this point is crash the kit, summon Nervo, make Omen, banish the floodgate, continue to win from there. But you can go into the battle phase, attack, so I already declared an attack on Wolf, and then the opponent use the field spell. So lose 1000 life points, gain... Why did I gain 1000? Oh, okay, so this was a mistake. Yes, this is the correct play. Go into battle phase, lose 1000, and then gain 1800, not 1000. So just gain the attack back, but effectively, Wolf is a 0. So Kit here just, crashes with him with like 0 attack, nothing happens. They cannot get rid of it, and you preserved your floodgate. And this next scenario I prepared is basically, we have an Ibli here, because Salamangreat can be run with this card as well. And the same, go into battle phase, attack, we use Sanctuary effect, lost already 1000 here, gained probably 18, yes I did gain 18 this time, gain 18, make Wolf 0, and they cannot crash the Ibli and probably not get rid of it in any way. So yeah, this is another interesting interaction. All right, so the next one, I love this one because I just love it when chains resolve so that it works in your favor, basically. So if your opponent has a monster or normal summons a monster that you want to deal with, and Kit is the perfect example for this scenario. If you have Hakaro and also Conquistador, what you can do is you can go Chain Link Mo Hakaro because it's gonna resolve last. Chain Link to Conquistador, resolve, summon Conquistador, pop Kit, summon Hakaro, banish Kit. Now, how good is that? This is so simple. It's so perfect. It's like Kit is obviously not going to be able to trigger per the new rule changes because it left the initial location where it should have been to be able to activate the effect on the next available chain. So effectively, you got rid of Kit, you got rid of a resource in the graveyard, and it cannot even trigger. So it's an all-around perfect scenario for the Eldritch player, that is, of course. Alright, so again, we have a couple random things to go over. The first one being, if you're still, for example, running Prank Kits, because why not? If your opponent has Secure Gardna, you're not going to be able to burn with Lampseas, because the first time Secure Gardna is going to prevent damage, and this also works with, doesn't work, I should say, with Dark Ruler, because if you are under Dark Ruler, you should not go for a Lampseas play, because you will not be able to burn, and you will not be able to summon a Prank Kit. Now the next one is Appaloosa together with Droplet. So this is applicable, of course, to any monster changing its stats, anything like this, but I chose this in particular because it's very applicable for, Tri Brigade, and obviously it's cards in the meta right now. That's why we're talking about it. So Appaloosa is usually at 24 most of the time. So if you use Droplet, what's going to happen is first it's going to get halved, so it's going to be at 1200. And then the effects are going to get negated. However, Appaloosa's attack will not go to 0 until the end of the turn. It's still gonna stay at 1200 for, the purpose. It was at 24 and now it's at 1200. And this is because when a modifier is applied that sets something to a specific value and having something is considered specific value, it's going to freeze there. So the attack will go to 1200. The effects are still going to get negated, so you will not be able to negate something once more with Appaloosa. And it's just going to stay locked. But then at the end of the turn, it's going to go to 0 because, the modification of the stats wears off because Droplet wears off. But because it was negated, it's going to get to 0 because it's not constantly checking. Cards like Appaloosa or Access Code, they just apply once when they are summoned, for example, and then they do not constantly check. However, something like Grand Mojo or something like that, it's going to constantly check. So if Grand Mojo was to be dropleted, what's going to happen is the attack is going to get halved, the defense is going to go to 0, however, because the effects are still negated, and then at the end of the turn, it's going to regain everything because it constantly checks, and this is the main difference. Now the next one is just a quick tip with Anaconda and Dragoon. If you summon Dragoon with the help of Anaconda, what you can do is use Anaconda's effect, attempt to make something dark, and then negate with Dragoon to make it 4000 attack. Then the next one happened to me while I was testing Tri Brigade, and what happened is I had the option to send to the graveyard properly summoned Ferjit and an improperly summoned Ferjit. And I chose to put the improperly summoned one in the graveyard, and it was my only beast at that point. And I knew my opponent ran IDP. So I just figured it's interesting to put in here. Try to have improperly summoned cards in the graveyard to play around IDP, because your opponent still needs to special summon them in order to banish, both cards on both players' fields. And if they're not able to special summon, IDP will effectively do nothing. And then we have, staying on the topic of Tri Brigade, still 2 crossout things that are interesting. So crossout can make your effects live. Now what I mean by that is you can just activate crossout to banish random Tri Brigade from your deck, so you make live either the Omen Surge or the Revolt. And now the last one, and this one, I love this one because it's so... I don't want to say gimmicky in a way that it sounds degrading, because it's not, but what you can run, what you can legit run is Predaplant Chimera Flesia. So what happens is you use it if it's sent to the graveyard via Maximus or something like this. Just send it to grave. You can run it in decks that don't really use up their extra deck, completely, all of the 15 slots if you still have the space. you can put it in, and then what's going to happen, its effect is going to trigger on the standby phase, and you can search defusion and actually defuse a fusion, you know, from the IDP player that you find hard to deal with, for example, Winda. So this next one is going to be what happens if you get lanciat on normal summon of cat in Tri-Brigade. Now this is very like situational in a way where you need to run this specific package to be able to apply this, I guess, little combo to your plays. But it's something that you could do because me personally, I feel like, now I'm spoiling everything, but I feel like the Fabled package is something that most certainly should be run because it's one card. It's not that dead because of cat, which can still summon it out. It can be searched and get rid of and whatever. It's not the worst brick, and Herald is nice. So yeah, I think you should be running this. But this is my personal opinion. So if you are running it and you get lanciat on normal summon, what you can do is just activate cat effect, because the Fabled is a target for cat since it's a beast. So you just summon out Kit and Fabled, make Herald, and with this effectively, yeah, you got lanciat, but you have an Omni negate, and because you chose to summon Kit, you have the effect. So you go Kit to Kit effect, summon a Sendervo, search Kit, and you have follow-ups. So it's not just, you're not just dead, basically. You don't gotta just scoop or pass or whatever. You still have a negate, you have a Kit for follow-up. So I'd say that's a nice trade-off. You know, your grave is loaded. You have a nice trade-off with Lancia over here. All right, so this next one we're gonna go over this is like highly situational. Long story short, if you're not aware of this version of the deck, my friend is playing Dinos with Dogmatica. It's just something that works for him. It's quite interesting, to be perfectly honest. And this is a situation that came up for him in a match I was watching, and basically what happened was he got gammed. Now the scenario I put, you know, over here in the replay is right here, Misk should probably be banished, because I guess if you go effect and banish it, you're gonna get gammed. So imagine he's banished and Gamma was used. So Driver is the centerpiece of this entire combo, I guess. And it works together with Lost World. Now at this point, you probably know where this is going. So what he did was he went Nadir, he pitched Antis to the graveyard, searched Ecclesia, and then with Antis attempted to pop Driver. But because of the field spell, you can protect normal monsters, not just dinos. So he decided he's going to protect, and he destroyed a baby and continued with his plays. And I felt like it was such a neat play that I just needed to include it. So he just used baby effect, got Oviraptor, used Oviraptor, and just continued to go from there. All right, so now we're at the end. So this last thing I purposely kept until the very end, so we finish off with something strong, with something that hopefully you can come back to, or just write like notes, like actual notes from this video, and keep it, because I feel like it's important information. So what we're going to talk about is what do monsters remember or forget when they are booked or temporarily banished, because there is a difference. Alright, so if you book a monster face down, what it remembers after being flipped face up is that it was summoned this turn, the way of summoning it, for example, it was fusion summon or something, but also if it attacked this turn and if it changed its battle position this turn. However, it forgets where he was actually summoned from. So maybe he knows that, you know, he was previously fusion summoned, but he doesn't know whether he was revived. He doesn't know whether he came from the extra deck. So he does not know his location, where he came from. He does not know the stats or anything about its materials. But however, and this is something that's very important, this does not mean that you cannot use, for example, defusion, which we talked about before, that you cannot use defusion because the game itself realizes what the materials were, but the monster forgets the actual like stats or names of the materials. And the things that the monster also forgets is if it already used its once per turn effect, if it changed any stats, and also any modifications that might have previously affected that monster. And for a temporarily banished monster, it's quite similar, but there is one difference. So after being returned, what it remembers is just the same as the booked monster. However, the temporarily banished monster knows where it came from. So it knows whether or not it was revived from the graveyard or came from the extra deck, for example. So this is what it remembers. However, it forgets everything else just like the booked monster. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we've covered quite a lot, many a bit more deck-oriented things. And yeah, I'm pretty much sure I said everything in the intro as well. Just write to me if you have anything interesting. If you find these videos helpful, entertaining, educational, whatever, thank you. It makes me really happy. And consider subbing, liking, sharing the content, whatever. Check out Twitch as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.